Now, people ask me why I love musicals so much, and normally I'm tempted to answer in song, but today I'm going to answer with 10 must-see movie musicals that excite me, that I come back to over and over again because they define the brilliance of the art form. So if the one that gets you going is not on the list, share it in the comments. Hi, I'm Scott. You're watching Inside Musicals, the channel for all things musical theatre. And this list is not according to some study. These are my personal favourites, whether for the story, the artist, the artistry, the execution, or pure nostalgia. They're not obscure, they're not highbrow, they're not controversial, mostly. But how do you narrow a whole world of musicals to only 10? Well, first, this is movie musicals only. So for me, no Sweeney Todd. My favourite stage show, not my favourite movie. So not on the list. Second, no animated musicals. So as much as it pains me, no Beauty and the Beast, no Little Mermaid. Stricken. And third, nothing that annoys me. I mean, we all love the sound of music. Till they're married, and then who cares? And don't tell me you've never slept through the ending. Or Singing in the Rain. I mean, top of so many lists. Iconic, so much to love. But to think I can sit through that gotta dance sequence, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't belong in the film. It feels like a Gene Kelly indulgence, and it ruins the experience for me. So, brutal. Not on the list. But here are 10 that really get me going. First up, Chicago. This film was so exciting for me. I remember seeing it at the cinema, and at the time, big budget splashy movie musicals were a rare beast. I mean, we'd had Moulin Rouge, which has one great sequence in the Roxanne tango, and the rest of it felt like pulling teeth because they didn't cast singers in the lead roles. There had been Evita, which was ambitious, cinematic, but Chicago was pure showbiz. It was slick, it was stylish, it was confident, and they had me at all that jazz. I mean, that choreography, the lighting, the editing, they didn't hide its theatrical roots, but the language of film brought it home up close and personal in a way that could never happen on stage. And I remember leaving the cinema on such a high thinking, musicals are back. And in a way they were, because without Chicago we wouldn't have Dreamgirls, Hairspray, Les Mis, or even High School Musical. Now, I wasn't the target audience for High School Musical, but it proved that there was a hunger for song and dance on screen. Sure, maybe we had to endure Rock of Ages, Burlesque, La La Land. Maybe that's the price we pay for having nice things. But Chicago reassured me that there were still people who knew how to make musicals for the screen, and good ones at that. Now, I grew up watching old movies, and I don't know if anyone else gets this, but I actually get an endorphin rush from the look of Technicolor, from those saturated colour palettes. It's like I actually physically get tingles and a little bit giggly. So this next one is one of those classics. Now, while MGM might have been considered the home of musicals, I forever bow down to 20th Century Fox for bringing us Gentlemen Prefer Blondes with Marilyn Monroe. This is famous for the iconic Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend sequence. And this is pure musical comedy. It's lightweight. It's not Hamilton, it's not Next to Normal. And maybe if you buy into the current notion of the Hollywood girl boss, you might balk at Marilyn's depiction of the dumb blonde. But the character is smarter than she appears, and that's the point of the story. Now, when I was younger, I don't think I appreciated what a brilliant actress Marilyn Monroe was, because she created this persona both on screen and off screen. But here, her comic timing, her physicality is just delicious. And she's actually a very good singer. Yes, it's often breathy, but it was by design. She recorded vocals very close to the microphone to suggest intimacy. Again, part of that persona. Then there's Jane Russell, the cynical, smart-talking best friend. You know, acting styles evolve over time. But there's something about Jane Russell's delivery that feels surprisingly modern. Oh, and you must see her parody of Marilyn in a reprise of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. And then there's the song, Is There Anyone Here for Love? I mean, this must be the most overtly homoerotic display of man flesh to get past the censors at the time. This is a scene where Jane Russell's character tries and fails to get the attention of the entire US male Olympic squad while they're writhing and flexing and wrestling all around her in nothing but flesh-coloured hot pants. So if you like your musicals on the camp side, this is one for you, and you can thank director Howard Hawks. Thank you, Mr. Hawks. Next up, A Star is Born. And no, not Gaga, no, not Streisand, and not even the original Janet Gaynor non-musical that some people just call a film. No, this is the Garland version. Now, about 30 minutes of this film have been lost, but they've restored it with still images and production audio from the set. So if you can get past the strangeness of the reconstruction, there's a lot to love here. I mean, songs by Harold Arlen and Ira Gershwin. It's in widescreen, which was still pretty new at the time. And this is a raw, mature performance by Judy Garland. I mean, in fact, she was nominated for an Oscar for this role. Now, while this film isn't strictly a musical, because people don't spontaneously burst into song, the musical performances and the showbiz setting earns a place on this list. And while it is a tragic story of a rising star whose lover's career is tanking, there are also some very funny moments that mock the absurdity of Hollywood. Now, one of Judy Garland's strengths as an actor was her vulnerability. And one thing I really admire in this film was her willingness and bravery to represent some of her personal struggles in the story of this film. Not all of them in her character, but she would have known the public would draw parallels. I mean, this film was personal. She cared about this. It's a long one, but it's well worth a watch. Now, before Chicago or Hairspray hit the big screen, the same team, thank you Neil Moron, Craig Zadan, brought us a small screen adaptation of Gypsy, starring Bette Midler. This has got to be one of my favourite musicals ever. I mean, it's wall-to-wall hits, it's a crackling script, and it's the epitome of Broadway's golden age. Based on the memoir of Gypsy Rose Lee, this is a biographical musical done right. Don't get me wrong, I love Funny Girl, love Barbra Streisand, but come on, second half of that film, what a yawn. But here, Gypsy keeps moving from beginning to end with fabulous songs by Stephen Sondheim and Julie Stein. I mean, gotta get a gimmick. Always a showstopper. In fact, after watching this film, my niece said to my mum, "Granny, when I grow up, I want to be a stripper." Oh, that's the power of musicals. Musicals change lives. Now, I didn't love the 1962 Rosalind Russell film with Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood, wonderful. Rosalind Russell, I mean, she's just not much of a singer. But here, Bette Midler, love her or not, is loud and proud as Mama Rose. Her performance owes a lot, I think, to Ethel Merman, but she still makes it her own. But what I really love about it is that she recorded some of the vocals live on set, which gives those moments some immediacy. More than anything, I love that this version stays true to the stage production. Now, not many musicals survive intact in the transition from stage to screen, but here they don't mess with it. They don't reorder it, they don't open it out, they don't go on location. This is all shot on sound stages. So for those of us who love the show, this is as close to theatre as you're going to get. Now, this next film wasn't really on my radar as a kid, but I kind of really grew into it as an adult, and that is Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. It's not a deep story, but it is complete in its simplicity. It's seven all-singing, all-dancing backwoodsmen who abduct seven women and make them their brides, and then have to win their love. I know, sweet. And look, I have to be careful here, because I know inevitably someone's going to be outraged at the depiction of chauvinism in this film. But that's the point of the struggle between the two main characters. It's their clash of values. It's not a mistake. The writers were aware of it, and in their argument, the respectful position wins. Could we make this film now? Probably not. But we have to remember that depicting something is not the same as condoning it. And this was Mel Brooks' philosophy in The Producers with Springtime for Hitler. Sometimes the best way to deflate a bully is to laugh at them, and that's kind of what we're doing here. But what's undeniable about this film is the quality of the music and the dancing. When we think about, say, the balletic, let's call it tweeness of Agnes de Mille's choreography that hasn't maybe aged quite so well, or even the elegance of Fred Astaire, the choreography here by Michael Kidd is a breath of fresh air. It's exciting, it's masculine, and it's energetic. The score is packed with great tunes, some very naughty lyrics. In fact, check out some of the demos of the lyrics that didn't make it into the final film. But the film was also filmed with a degree of difficulty. Every scene, every angle had to be filmed twice. Once in CinemaScope and once with a standard format camera. Because at the time, not all cinemas were equipped with widescreen projectors. But they not only had to film it twice, they had to restage and re-choreograph everything to fit in both of those formats. Come on, that's commitment. So even if this story offends your modern sensibilities, you must see it if only for the barn-raising sequence and the glorious harmonies of Lonesome Polecat. Okay, how about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? I mean, this film just warms my heart. It says something about the power and persistence of dreamers, and it's a film where every department is on point. Screenplay by Roald Dahl, so you know there's going to be adventure and invention. And I think this is maybe the best score the Sherman Brothers ever wrote. Every song is a gem. It's as though they said to Dick Van Dyke, what can you do? How can we build a song around it? So there are physical numbers like Toot Sweets or Me Old Bamboo. Then there's tenderness in songs like Hushabye Mountain or U2. But for me, the sweetness is never cloying. Even in a song like Truly Scrumptious, which is about a woman whose name is literally a sweet treat. And every time I watch this film, I get a thrill from the girl in the music box sequence. It's surprising and inventive and funny and moving all at once. It had popping and animation before those dance styles even had a name. And then there's the villain, by far the scariest of any musical, stage or screen. That is the child catcher, played by Sir Robert Haldman. I saw this movie at the drive-in with a friend of mine and his parents. And for days after this film, my friend had nightmares about the child catcher. Don't let that put you off, but you have been warned. There are some things you can't unsee. You know, one of the greatest losses to Hollywood and to Broadway was the death of Howard Ashman at age 40. So if I'm not going to mention Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid in this list, I have to mention Little Shop of Horrors, based on the 1960 Roger Corman comedy horror of the same name. Often credited as leading the Disney Renaissance of the late 80s, Howard Ashman steered the Disney story writing department and fostered the idea that animation and musicals were made for each other. In fact, I think Beauty and the Beast, maybe even till now, has the longest, most complex opening number of any animated film. Must check that. Howard Ashman understood character, which is not unique among lyricists, but he could also use simple language very precisely, and he had an enormous talent for shifting rapidly between comedy and pathos from line to line. So in The Little Mermaid, when Ariel sings Part of Your World, there's laughter and longing in the space of 3 minutes. Or in this case, in Little Shop of Horrors, when Audrey sings Somewhere That's Green, we're laughing at her naivety in one moment and then we're moved by her modest ambition in the very next. And that is a great talent. And of course, the lyrics come to life with Alan Menken's music, which is playful and clever and tuneful, and in this case, reminiscent of girl groups of the 60s, a bit like Hairspray. And God bless director Frank Oz, who we know as the voice and puppeteer of Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Yoda, for forever capturing Alan Green's performance on celluloid. You know, I don't love how they messed with the ending of this film, but I can forgive that for everything else that's right, including a very sweet performance by Rick Moranis as Seymour. Now, in 1983, we have a throwback to operetta in the form of Gilbert and Sullivan's Pirates of Penzance. Now, Gilbert and Sullivan can be stodgy in the wrong hands. They're more concerned about satirising English bureaucracy than they are about character. But this was based on the hit Broadway revival of the 80s. And it's vital, it's funny, and it's headed by an extraordinary cast. There's Kevin Kline at his comic best as the lusty pirate king. Angela Lansbury is delightful as the put-upon Ruth. Oh, Linda Rodstadt, the country rock singer, is Mabel, an operatic soprano. And Rex Smith, the pop singer, is Frederick. And all I'm saying is, tight pants, open shirt, worth the price of admission. You can quote me on that. You know, one of the hallmarks of all of these great films is the way that all the elements come together. And part of that is acknowledging the theatricality of the material. And here, much like Gypsy or Little Shop of Horrors, the artifice of the soundstage set supports the larger-than-life characters and story. Oh, and when you watch this film, listen out for the wisecracks from the background characters in the group scenes. They're very funny. Now, Blake Edwards, best known for directing Breakfast at Tiffany's, Pink Panther, among others, wrote and directed Victor Victoria for his wife, Julie Andrews, who you might know from a couple of other short films. The movie has something to say, and it doesn't shy away from it, but it never forgets that it's entertainment. So it's breezy, and there's plenty of physical comedy. The story is Julie Andrews plays an out-of-work singer pretending to be a man, pretending to be a woman, to star in a high-class drag show. Now, Robert Preston, who you might know from the film The Music Man, is charming and funny as her gay mentor. James Garner is a sexually curious gangster, and Leslie Ann Warren, she just eats up the screen for all the wrong reasons. In the right way. If you like La Cage aux Folles or The Birdcage, you'll love this. It's outrageous, it's sweet, and it's funny. Oh, make sure you watch the end of the movie to see Robert Preston playing Julie Andrews in drag. That alone puts it in my top 10. Very funny improvised moments. Now, before we get to the final film, I want to give an honourable mention to Bob Fosse's All That Jazz. It's not strictly a musical, but it has musical sequences, a showbiz setting, and I think it's his masterpiece. If you've never heard of Bob Fosse, if you've ever done jazz hands, you know his work. Probably the most influential dance style on Broadway. He's directed and or choreographed shows like Sweet Charity, Pippin, The Pajama Game, Damn Yankees, Chicago, Cabaret. Now, he co-wrote, directed and choreographed All That Jazz. And it was based on a hectic period of his life where he's editing a film at night and creating Chicago by day. So it's a semi-autobiographical self-examination of a man in existential crisis, which makes it sound very dry, but it's much more colourful than that. It's chaotic, it's sexy, it has a wicked sense of humour, and while it's an idealised self-portrait, it's not an especially flattering one, and I kind of admire that. And the more I see it, the more I love it. Now, if your idea of a good musical is Hello, Dolly, this might not be for you. It's brash, it's gritty, it's experimental. It has one of the best depictions of a Broadway dance audition cattle call I've ever seen on film. So if you've seen 42nd Street or A Chorus Line, see this. This is the real deal, and it's a perfect way to open the film. Now, to appreciate our final film, we have to step back a little bit further to 1927, The Jazz Singer, black and white, crackly sound, but the first full-length talking picture. Because only 12 years later, in 1939, out comes The Wizard of Oz, in all its sparkling sound and Technicolor glory. I mean, I love this film for so many reasons, least of which is its invention and creativity. I mean, they were still inventing the basics of filmmaking at this time, of special effects, of recording and synchronizing sound, recording orchestra. And yet someone had the vision to conceive of Kansas in sepia and Oz in Technicolor at a time when most movies were still in black and white. You know, Rodgers and Hammerstein are credited as ushering in the age of the integrated musical, but here they were doing it in 1939. Every song earns its place. Harold Arlen's music is sophisticated, yet accessible. Yves Harburg's lyrics are funny and playful, and yet heartfelt when they need to be. And for all our modern technology, filmmaking doesn't get any better than this. I mean, think of The Good Witch of the North arriving in a bubble, The Tornado, Miss Gulch turning into the Wicked Witch, puffs of smoke, flying monkeys, Yellow Brick Road, ruby slippers. I mean, this film is the very definition of iconic. And to think that Dorothy was originally intended for Shirley Temple, but 20th Century Fox wouldn't loan her to MGM, so they recast it with Judy Garland. At early screenings, the film was running long. They were going to cut Over the Rainbow, one of the greatest songs and performances of the 20th century. And someone said, oh, no one will believe a girl can sing like that. And yet Judy Garland could, at 16, with no pitch correction. They did 8 takes, 4 of which survive, and they used 2 in the film. Now, for a story that's essentially a fairy tale, there's a richness and depth to these characters that taps into a human truth. And I think, more than anything else, that's why this film endures. Now, obviously, these aren't the only great movie musicals, but if there's one that you think that we should all see, because it's among the best of the best, share it in the comments and tell us why, and maybe I'll do a follow-up on your suggestions. But for now, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for sharing my love of musicals. I do love you. Now get out there. Be brilliant.